Hey guys, welcome to Sideline Success Academy. This is your host, Jordan Capel. Today we're going to be talking about faith, family, and football, looking at the three areas that we're going to focus on a lot within this podcast and the areas of growth that I really want to focus on for each of you coaches. In order for you to get the most out of this, you kind of have to ask this question, what defines success in your own life? Everyone's in a different phase. Some of you are beginning coaches who don't have a family, don't have kids yet. So your definition of success may be vastly different than someone who has been doing it for 15 years, has 3 kids and a wife. And so what you have to do is kind of evaluate, where you are in your own phase of life and then determine what success looks like within each of those areas. And so our goal is helping coaches succeed on the field and in life. And in order to do that, we focus on 3 foundations. The 3 foundations is faith, family, and football, which is a very popular phrase. I mean, I told a coach about this not too long ago, and he kind of rolled his eyes and, kind of fake gagged, forced his finger down the throat. But it is overused within our industry. But the reality is that everyone that I know could improve within these foundations. Okay. And so what I try to do is categorize and prioritize everything into these 3 things, faith, family, and football. Football just refers to our profession. And you can kind of replace that with whatever, if you're not a football coach and you just happen to roll across this, you put the 3rd category with whatever your current career or whatever it may be. But for us, it's football, which is a passion and profession and things. So these foundations kind of outline how we approach our podcast episodes. Each episode will aim to kind of share ways to improve in each one of these areas. And so what does success look like in each area? What does success look like in my faith? What does success look like in my family? And what does success look like for me in football? In order for you to know how to improve, you first have to outline where you want to go. And so that's a very important question that you have to ask yourself in order to measure growth. It's a lot of times we begin thinking, oh, I just need to do this and never have an end goal in mind. If you don't ever have an end goal, then you have no clue where you're going. And so you need to define what success looks like within your area so that you can create a ladder working towards that goal. As football coaches go, we struggle with long hours in the office, spending lots of time breaking down film, discussing game planning, looking for ways to improve. And we tend to sacrifice the other 2 areas that are found in the foundations. And so what we have to do is start reprioritizing our lives and establishing boundaries, if you will, to kind of prevent things from always being consumed by football, okay? Or maybe always consumed by other areas. But if you look at these, faith, family, and football, as a progression of prioritization. So we start with faith. Faith is the number 1 thing. Family is the number 2 thing. Football is the number 3 thing. And if you always look at it in that way, then you will always keep your life in line, so to speak. And that's something that's really helped me as a young coach working up till now. I'm still young, but beginning coach till now, I've always been able to kind of prioritize my faith. And any time that I've made a decision that deprioritizes my faith, God has kind of pushed me back towards Him. Okay, and that's not it's not in a negative way all the time, but it is in a way where your conscience maybe is just alert of the decision that you made and you feel a sense of guilt. Other times it is in a negative way where He physically has to do something to you to get your attention maybe, or something like that, to show you, hey, you made a wrong decision, you need to get back on track. In a lot of ways, we kind of justify our decisions because we have this sense of calling. And I do believe that you are called to be a coach, and I do believe that you have a very important job, but that job title does not exclude you from the other titles that you have within your life. All right. And so, what I mean by that is that if you are a believer, if you are a Christian, your job title does not exclude you from being a church member, a good church member. Your job title does not exclude you from being a husband, a good husband. Your job title does not exclude you from being a father and a good father. And so, what you have to learn to do is not use your job title as an excuse, but rather reprioritize your life, okay, so that you take ownership of each of those roles and you begin to excel not just as a football coach, but you begin to excel as a Christian, as a husband, as a father, and as a football coach. And the reality is that if you look in your office and you think about the coaches that are in your office, how many of them are Christians? Think about that for a second. How many of them are Christians? Okay. How many of those men are or have been divorced? Now think about how many of them have been coaching for, more than 5 years, more than 10 years. Okay. And so when you think about that, you kind of realize, okay, we're in an office of 10 people. Of the 10 people, 6 people have been divorced, or 5 people have been divorced. Okay. Of the 10 people, 5 are Christians. All right. Of that 5, how many of them, do you know are Christian because they live it out? Or how many of them you only know they're Christian because you've physically had to ask them? And that's the stigma that we're trying, or that I'm trying to really get out of the football coaching industry. Like, I want to be a model for my students. Okay. And so that I want them to see that I am a faithful Christian. I want them to see that I am a loving, caring husband and father. And I do want them to see that I am good at my job, that I'm going to invest the time necessary to make sure that the program's successful. And so what you have to do is kind of reevaluate where you are and where you want to be in each of those areas, and the family thing, it changes, right? And as a young coach, your priorities are going to be totally different than somebody who is married. If you're a younger coach and single, I talk about this all the time. Like, you're able to do a lot more things within your career than somebody who's married, because now I'm taking decisions that not only affect myself, but also affect my family. When you're young and single, it's just you, right? And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail. Keep the faith. It highlights here the book of Joshua, okay? And if you know the story of Moses and him pulling the people out of Egypt, a lot of times we think that when we begin to do what God wants us to do, that it'll be easy to stay faithful. All right. And if you know the story of Moses, all right, that's quite the opposite, right? And you have a lot of challenges that arise, and the Israelites continue to turn away from God. All right. And so you have to, as a coach, recognize that there's going to be challenges once you enter the career field that are going to try and pull you away from Christ. And as a Christian, you have to reprioritize your faith and keep your faith first in order to fulfill and live out a Christian life within coaching. And if you haven't started coaching, or if you haven't been coaching very long, you may not understand what I'm talking about, but not every single coach is a Christian. I'm going to repeat that. Not every single coach is a Christian. They are not going to always be models, okay, of what the Christian faith should look like. Does that mean that they're bad people? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And does that mean that they're bad coaches? No, no. Just because someone's not a Christian does not make them not a bad coach. All right. But if you are identified as a born again Christian male, then you should act and be different than someone who is not a born again Christian male. All right. And so I'm going to reference Colossians chapter 3, verse 23. Whatever you do, do it from the heart as something done for the Lord and not for people, knowing that you will receive the reward of an inheritance from the Lord. You serve the Lord Christ. And it goes on to say, for the wrongdoer will be paid back for whatever wrong he has done, and there is no favoritism. And so if you think about this, why you chose this profession, all right? Why you believe God called you into this field. And a lot of times it has to do with impact, right? You want to make an impact on young kids. You need to be the Christ-like example within your office. You need to be the Christ-like example for your students. And does that mean you're going to be perfect? No, absolutely not. I know I'm not perfect. I mess up. I screw up. I make mistakes. I do things wrong all the time. You have to ask for forgiveness. But that doesn't mean that we abandon who we are or who we want to accomplish or who we want to be within our faith to accomplish something within our profession. And so keep the faith. Understand that you want to grow as a Christian male while continuing to grow as a football professional at whatever that may look like in your world. All right. If you want to be a head coach, you can have head coach aspirations and still attend church on Sundays. You can have head coach aspirations and still read your Bible, still talk about church, still do these things. Just because other people don't do them doesn't mean that you have to step away from them, right? Understand that not everyone in the room is going to agree with you, your faith, your religion, all those things, right? But you can still hold true to who you are. Another thing is building your family. You know, in Colossians chapter 3, if you go up, it talks about verse 19, husbands, love your wives and don't be bitter toward them. It's, if you look at this series of verses in Colossians, at chapter 3, Paul is actually talking about, the Christian life, more or less, all right? And so he gives you that example. You have got to make sure that your home is secure and that you love your wife, that you love your kids, that you are present for them. A lot of times again, it goes back to that justification, right? Like it's like, I'm a coach, so I have to do these things. I have to be at the office until 8 p.m. I have to be watching X amount of hours on film. I have to be doing this. I have to be doing that. But my family can wait. My wife can wait. And when you begin to do those things, you show that you're prioritizing your job over your family, over your faith, and you're making choices consistently trying to improve your career over these things, then every area of your life that you're neglecting is beginning to dwindle away. You're going to begin losing valuable time with your wife. You're going to begin losing valuable time with your kids. Those are things that are not going to come back. And what we see a lot of time within our industry is that they end up with someone getting divorced. And you look at it and it's like, well, you weren't checking the boxes that your wife needed as a spouse. You weren't doing these things for your family. And, if you look at this, you do not ever want to look at the end of your career with regret towards decisions that you made for your family. And so what you have to do is, again, it goes back to that prioritization. You look at your faith, you look at your family, you look at football. What are things that I need to do to be successful in each one of those categories? How can I do this without losing this? And there are going to be moments where you have to make decisions, really tough decisions, and say, I need to not do this for football because my family needs this. And if you look at very various writers, like the 7 perspectives of effective leaders, they talk about this a lot. Like you really have to look at it from a different lens, and look at what you want to accomplish. And you may have to designate time for family days specifically for family. Like on Saturday, they know that they're gonna get their dad time, right? And those are not you're not going to be able to do those on Friday nights. Why? Because you're playing football on Friday nights, or you're playing football on Thursday nights, Saturday, whatever it is. But you're going to have a designated family day where I'm taking time out of my week to reinvest into my family. And that's just something that's got to be fundamental within your life, because you are prioritizing your family, because you don't want to sacrifice those relationships. All right, so on a less serious note, we're going to be talking a little bit about football now. And I hope that you guys got something out of that. And we are going to be looking at something that's a little bit different from common 3-4 talk. So, like a lot of people, when they talk 3-4 systems, their immediate go-to coverage is going to be quarters. And I don't mind running quarters, but I don't base out of quarters. And so if you go through and you can watch video after video after video, you see a lot of quarters as base within the 3-4 systems. And we really base out of cover 3. And there are a lot of benefits that I see to running cover 3 over quarters. And I'm going to kind of like talk about those in a little bit more detail, but quarters is a safe coverage, and it is a coverage that kind of eliminates all the deep routes. But what do you immediately give away in quarters coverage a lot of times? Well, you give away the flats. Like you're expecting your outside linebackers, who are not necessarily always coverage style players, or maybe they're decent at coverage, but any team that is a good spread team is going to be able to identify that weakness and get to your flats pretty quick. All right, and so we run a ton of cover 3. The reason that I run a ton of cover 3 is trying to kind of eliminate those easy flat shots. Now, I will alternate, especially on large distances. So, like if I know that they're going to have to spend the pill to get the first down, if it's a 3rd and 12 or something like that, I may set up and run a quarters, and then we're just going to rally to the football. But most of my downs, if you go back and if I was to bring up my stats from even this past year, most of my downs are going to be in some version of cover 3. And the reason I do that is to kind of get the flat defender. So if I send outside pressure, so I send an outside linebacker. So if I send my strong side outside linebacker, well, in cover 3, we can have a strong safety absorb that spot and still play the flat, and that flat's not totally vacant. Whereas if you send outside pressure in quarters, who's responsible for that flat? An inside linebacker who's going to work out there? It just doesn't always work that way. And so if you do cover 3, now you can have somebody absorb that flat responsibility, and it's not a vacant spot on the field. And so that's the benefit. Okay. Another thing that you can kind of do is you can also spin cover 3. So rotating the safeties over the top and then having an aggressive corner. We do this a lot towards trips. Okay. So if I wanted to run cover 3 to trips, I could still spin the free safety, strong safety towards the trip side, and then that corner that's lined up to the trip side, now he becomes an additional flat player. And what this does is it kind of allows us to have an aggressive attack on any type of bubble plays or something like that. But if I wanted to send pressure from the trip side, so if we're going to say my strong side linebacker is over there on the trip side, he's gone. Well, now this safety doesn't have to roll down showing the field, okay, showing his move. Instead, we roll over the top. It's kind of given that hesitation, right? And so now you're kind of disguising the cover three, making it look like, oh, they're still too high. They're probably running quarters. And then boom, we're actually rolling cover three, and the corner is sitting there while you got a linebacker coming and screaming in your face. Same thing if you have somebody, if they kind of go 3-by-1, and on the one receiver side is their main stud, and you know they're going to try and take a shot to that side, you can also roll to that side and just have your corner bail on the trip side. It's just an easy way to kind of get some different looks and different ways to send pressure without sacrificing the flats. And so if you learn to kind of disguise cover three and roll it different ways and be able to absorb with your safety, then you really don't have those same disadvantages that you get in quarters. And again, I'm not saying that quarters is a bad coverage, and I'm not saying that cover three is superior. Both are in my package and both have their place, but what I'm going to run a lot more is going to be cover three. And it may look different from snap to snap, which it should, but you want to make sure that if I'm going to be sending outside pressure, okay, I want somebody, you may not want, I want somebody who's going to be able to pick up the flat and play the flat, right? And if you do that in quarters, so if I send an outside linebacker in quarters, now I don't have anybody to pick up the flat. And I think that there's a lot of advantages to running cover three, even in the run game too. So like even if they lined up in a spread strong, spread weak, so they have some type of H-back in the play. Well, now you can run cover three, and you can just have your strong safety key and fit off the H-back. And so now he's just watching that fullback type person, and now he becomes an extra run fitter. So he's just reading him, and he's fitting off this H-back. It's a super easy way to get an extra hat in the game, and you're not really sacrificing anything coverage-wise because you got three deep, and there's only three people that are probably going to be able to run verticals very fast. And, it all depends on the film study too. You want to see who the H-back type person is, but especially if they're going to be running a ton of H-back stuff and it's power and counter all day long, well then, heck, your safety is going to be able to just line up with the H-back. He could just be reading him and fitting off of him. And that gets you an extra hat in the game that's unaccounted for. And nobody's going to be able to block a safety who's going to be reading the H-back and fitting off of him. It's just not going to happen. And so now you have three deep, boom, you're playing cover three, and you got this H-back who's spying and fitting off of him. And that way you can kind of see all the advantages. I have a flat player. I'm sending outside pressure. I still have a flat player. I'm not losing the flats. All right. I'm able to spin. So once you kind of teach that aspect of it, now I can run cover three. I can still have three deep, but you have no clue how we're going to rotate. So if you just constantly, I could see it being easier if you're constantly absorbing all the time, where that safety's kind of sneaking down and replacing the outside linebacker, and you're just doing that snap after snap after snap. But if you're able to now sit with your heels at 10 to 12 and then spin, and you're rotating over the top or whatever it may look like, those two dudes are rotating. Now they're not able to tell where your safeties are going, or whether you're running quarters, whether you're running cover three, and they're not able to tell whether the flats are open. So if they're a team that's always attacking the flats, you kind of push them to kind of hesitate a little bit. Like if their corner's been bailing, now we rotate over the top, he can snatch on a hitch or something like that. And it's not super easy because your safeties are now spinning instead of just absorb. And so that's just a kind of different way to hide that coverage. And then, of course, you get the extra fitter just based off of reading the H-back. And so teaching that safety to kind of read the H-back and fit off of him is a great way to gain an extra hat in the box. And it eliminates a lot of runs that may break. So, like, if you have an outside linebacker, which we use our outside linebackers as force players, but say they're running power and he doesn't do a good job at forcing the play back in, if he ends up spilling it out, well, that may go to the house. But because you have a safety who's reading the H-back and fitting off of him, he may be coming up and cleaning it up for 6-yard gain. Whereas if he wasn't doing that and he was just playing quarters, now it's to the house. And so you kind of get a lot of benefits just from teaching and running cover three and kind of experimenting with it and finding ways to make it work for you and your program. And then for me, I don't know. I'm not a football know-it-all. Never going to claim to be. All right, I'm constantly learning the game, constantly trying to improve. But for me, I love cover three, and I love ways to run cover three, and I just find a lot more advantages over it than quarters. And it's super easy to teach with quarters. Like once you install cover three and you've been running cover three, quarters only changes the job really for one guy. Everyone else is still spot and drop, but they just have a smaller area than what they normally do. Okay, and so it's an easy way to transition from cover three to cover four, but it allows you a lot more versatility within your playbook and your calling and your script now, because you don't have to worry about, oh, if it's 2x2 and I send an outside linebacker, like I'm not going to have a flat defender unless I run cover two. Okay, and you may not want to run cover two versus 2x2. It just depends on you. Or like there's tons of different ways to do it and then still run cover three. It's just overall, it's been a very, very good thing for me within my defense, and I'm just kind of sharing it with you guys. And if you want to learn more about it, then hopefully you're going to be able to follow us on some more videos. Okay. I'm going to be dropping more information within the podcast. I'm also going to be dropping more information within YouTube. And if you want to buy the 3-4 defensive playbook, and this is a whole 3-4 defensive playbook. It's got blitzes, it's got drills, it's got alignments, it's got everything you could need. Okay. And if it doesn't, then you email me and say, hey, I need to know more about this, and I'm going to take care of you. Okay. But this 3-4 defensive playbook is found on the website, sidelinesuccessacademy.com. All right. You can enter this pod discount 10. You'll get $10 off. It'll be a $19 playbook. And you can just learn a lot more about your 3-4 defensive system. And you're going to be able to install this with kids for any youth program. This is designed to be used at from Pee-wee to junior high to varsity level football. And it's an entire defense that you can install probably within 2 to 3 weeks. And if you have any questions at all, you can reach out to me either through the email, headcoach@sidelinesuccessacademy.com, or you can just catch me in the comments below. If you have questions about this stuff and you want to learn something new about the 3-4 defense, drop them below. I appreciate you guys hanging out. We're going to try and drop a new video next week, and hopefully we'll be able to be in touch again. All right.